Welcome to Pirate Politics, where we prepare you for your next political conversation. I'm Jeronimo Cortina.
And I'm Brandon Rottinghaus. We are the co-hosts of the Great Party Politics Show. We're professors at the University of Houston. We're at the end of our semester, so we are, though, at the beginning of the crazy politics of the summer. We've got, obviously, runoffs to midterms. We've got the president in China. We've got the ongoing conflict in Iran. Just a lot going on for us personally as academics, and also a lot going on in the world. But let's start with Iran, because obviously this is the epicenter of what's going on politically for the White House. The president describes the state of negotiations as, quote, on life support, unquote. That doesn't sound good. The problem is that both sides have dug in on their negotiating positions. Tehran wants war reparations from the U.S. They want basically sanctions for the conflict to date. They want to control the Strait of Hormuz. The president says this is, quote, a piece of garbage, unquote. The U.S. wants basically Tehran to eliminate its nuclear weapons program, and they want to be able to control the Strait of Hormuz. Just hard to see how there's going to be any kind of common ground here.
Yeah, it's like putting a circle into a square peg. But, I mean, this is an issue that was started by this Trump administration. Yeah. And the Trump administration started this a huge miscalculation in terms of this going to be 2 weeks most, and that's it.
That was about 2 weeks ago. And it's compounded by the problem the president faces when it comes to messaging on the economy, which has already been pretty limited. But now then he's asked questions about whether he considers the people's sort of bottom line pocketbook issues when it comes to foreign policy issues, and he says he doesn't. That's probably true for all foreign policy, but this is a bad time for him to basically admit that out loud, and for it to be, frankly, used against him in a bunch of ads that we're likely to see coming in November. So it's a real problem. And honestly, like, the root of the foreign policy crisis is really about domestic politics, at least in terms of kind of how we consider these things politically. And it's really not looking great for the White House, but there may be an opportunity for them to steer into this. So here's the problem. Basically, gas prices are increasing, right? They're about 4.5 cents per gallon. You know this as well as anybody. You've got a massive truck. You got to fill that thing up, driving every place. So that's a huge pinch for people. Fully 77% of the American people feel like Donald Trump and the administration has effectively been the cause of this rising prices. That's also including a majority of Republicans. That kind of partisanship usually flips the other way, and in this case is really bad news. You also see Trump's approval on the economy at about 30%. So this is not where the Republicans want to be going into a midterm.
Correct.
I want to ask you this question. What the Republicans propose is that they are going to suspend the federal gas tax. It's about 18 cents per gallon for regular gas, 24 cents per diesel. So do you think this is going to happen?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it can happen.
Yeah. Congress has to act. Right?
Yeah. Is it going to have an impact on our pocketbooks? Absolutely not.
It's small, especially because the price increase is so high for gas.
Exactly.
It's like 18 cents isn't going to matter that much, but it'll matter a little bit.
Well, I mean, like on average, if you're going to be filling up your car, let's say $25, right? Yeah. You're going to be paying 23.
Yeah.
I mean, the impact that you're going to get, or the relief that you're going to get, is going to be around $2, right? Yeah. So are people going to notice it when prices are almost $2 higher than that they were before?
Yeah.
No,
that's a good point.
I don't think it's going to have a significant impact.
No, and more bad news for the White House this week is that the kind of consumer price index is up by a little bit. And the numbers don't matter as much as like the way people feel. You know, we're constantly talking about the price of groceries, and I think that's where people are on this issue too. So those, despite the fact that, you know, people are like, you know, actually hurting, the numbers aren't good either. So the story is kind of compounded by that. So it's a problem, I think, for the Republicans in terms of how this process goes. The other issue to note here is that the Republicans are trying to basically package a bunch of other budget items together to take yet a third bite at the apple of reconciliation. We know, again, reconciliation is a process whereby, like, the majority can bundle together a bunch of budget type items and have it pass with the kind of a simple majority, which is good for the Republicans because they don't have enough to be able to
Correct.
overcome the filibuster. And so this is an opportunity for them to pass a bunch of stuff that without Democratic votes. But usually the third bite at the apple is where you get to the bitter core of it. And so they're going to come up maybe with like seeds in their mouth, which nobody likes. So the things that are included in the reconciliation bill include some affordability sweeteners. There's opportunities to basically provide some access to affordable housing, which is a plus for Republicans. They want to, fund the war in Iran, which is complicated politically. They want, like said Senator Ted Cruz, is asking for more capital gains tax cuts, maybe some pieces of the Save America Act, and of course, the big ask is the $1 billion ballroom. The president said this is going to be privately funded. It looks more like it's going to be funded by the government and taxpayers. So, how do you kind of see all these things playing together? Is this going to pass? First of all, and second of all, like what are the
just
politics
as
of it?
Senator Rand Paul, and he's like, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And maybe he can sway other senators to do it, but his argument is very simple, right? His argument is like, I'm 1,000% in favor if this thing is built with private funding. We should not be spending $1 billion on this ballroom at all.
It's a tough sell. Yeah, and I mean, I think it gets to the problem of the gas tax issue, which is that there's still resistance from Republicans, right? So some Republicans have said that they think that this goes too far, either because they don't want to embrace the president's conflict or because they're worried about the deficit. So Speaker Thune, Majority Leader, Thune was really unhappy about this. James Lankford from Oklahoma sort of expressed some reluctance, and he's in charge of the Energy Subcommittee. So like there's just a lot of people who on the Republican side are not so convinced this is the proper way to go. I think this could sell. I think that there's an opportunity here to kind of convince people this is needed, but it has to be done way before the moment where you kind of make this huge $1 billion ask. And it comes at a moment where, like we said, things are financially pretty rough, and the president's messaging on this is pretty limited. So, you've got the president who is proposing, for instance, the ballroom. He's also repainting the reflecting pool in the National Mall, which has now gone over budget.
Yeah.
He wants to...
not in I think there's some issues with the painting that is not, I would say, it's not the same across the pool. So,
oh, no. It looks different from each.
Yeah, I think, there's some issues over there. But so
no, we want the deepest of blue, right, to reflect the kind of, national pride. And maybe some maintenance is needed here. But again, it comes at a point where it feels like a let them eat cake kind of a situation from the White House. And people are probably going to look at this and say, why are we spending all this money on this stuff? UFC fights are going to happen on the White House lawn, an IndyCar race. This all comes at, America's 250th birthday. And I think at a moment where, for a lot of Republicans, they're just really nail-biting on this. So I guess my question is, do you think that Republicans will kind of balk at the price tag or about just kind of the specific elements of this that they're going to have to defend? Republicans are on the hook here because Trump is sort of making them. Democrats are saying, go ahead. We're going to hold you to these votes. You know what I mean? We're not even involved in this. Like, you have to make this choice, and we're going to definitely run ads against it. So,
well, I mean, I think that the Republican Party has to decide one way or the other what's going to be the future after Trump, right? We are 2 years away from this second term of President Trump, and they just need to decide, are we going to stick with this or not? Who's going to be the heir of the Trump legacy? Who's going to be reigning the MAGA movement? So on and so forth. So these are very important questions that Republicans need to be thinking about them right now. But the first most important question is, I need to be reelected. If they're not reelected, right, these questions become a little bit less important.
They're home with a cocktail, like watching CNN saying, boy, if it was me, I'd do it this way.
I would do this thing or not. So I think that's the very important thing. And given the messaging, right, given the messaging is not very good because spending $1 billion or UFC fights, et cetera, situates or it's a complete divorce from reality of the average American. And that is what is important, right? And then when you put that with what happened in the presidential campaign is, I'm for America, I'm from workers, I'm for making this country great again, bringing jobs, et cetera, and those things have not materialized fully for people to see them. Overall. And finally, I think the most important point besides this is that Democrats will also have to have a very disciplined strategy to be able to capitalize these issues already there.
Because, I mean, we think of politics as zero-sum game, and it is, but like it's also the case the Democrats are really unpopular on a lot of these issues too, so there has to be some way that they can find a strategy forward.
Correct.
But I think you're totally right. For the Republicans, they have to figure out, like, do deficits matter? Is that something we're going to focus on, right? Some people like Chip Roy do, but not everybody. Are we going to propose the kind of indifference on Iran or even kind of a counter strategy on Iran, right? That's what I think Republicans have to consider a kind of post-Trump. So lots of these questions that are sort of swirling that make it a challenge for Republicans to kind of follow that party line when the party line is basically whatever Donald Trump says it is. On that point, there has been huge redistricting news the last couple of weeks. It's funny because like 3 weeks ago, we were talking about how like Democrats were coming out ahead on this, right? Virginia's Supreme Court had ruled. Like we saw some, kind of changes in Utah that actually netted 1 seat for Democrats. California redistricted. So it was looking like Democrats were going to come out ahead. But a series of events basically made that probably impractical. The U.S. Supreme Court basically in the Calais decision decided that they were going to open the door to essentially minimize the impact of the Voting Rights Act. There's lots to unpack there, but the bottom line is basically that states are more or less going to be able to redraw lines without respect to kind of protecting some of these specific districts that they otherwise had. So that's going to net a handful of seats for Republicans. You've got the Virginia Supreme Court, which overruled the voters, and that'll change down the road. But for sure, we're seeing, I think, in the near term, that basically not be the benefit to Democrats that they thought it was. Places like Alabama, South Carolina, Florida are all moving in the direction of trying to gerrymander, netting maybe 10 seats. Unknown. This is sort of still all up in the ether. But I think the fact is that where, a month ago there was a sort of sensibility that Democrats were going to come out ahead, now it's looking like they're going to come out behind. What's your take on the kind of redistricting wars in 2026?
I mean, it's on both sides, right? It's Democrats and Republicans. Democrats, when they have the opportunity, they redistrict. Republicans, when they have the opportunity, they redistrict. What worries me most is the swing that the Supreme Court took at the Voting Rights Act, right? And it is a very narrow interpretation, right? Saying we're not in the 1960s anymore. And say, okay, fine, but we're also not in the 1800s. So the Constitution should not be interpreted as the 1800s, as sometimes this court has done when we had, for example, Roe v. Wade, or when we had the very important issues. So there is no consistency in terms of we should take the Constitution as a written document that is a written document, we should follow it to the T, or is it a live document that has to be interpreted with today's things. So
do you think that the Supreme Court is in jeopardy of becoming and or being perceived as too political of institutions?
Absolutely.
A lot of legal scholars have looked at this decision and said basically they're violating their own core rules, including the Purell principle, which is the sort of, in a nutshell, the principle that says we should stay out of politics. Is this a liability for the courts?
I think that it is a liability. I do not understand in this democracy, right? Why don't allow people to choose the representative that they want? I mean, it's something that I've been struggling over the years, and also goes to the very own fabric of our founding, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So to me, it's a very odd ruling and very politicized that we're entering in a area where the Supreme Court is making these political decisions, right? And making a whole issue argumentative, whatever, that doesn't make any sense.
There's definitely, I think, concern that the ruling was misread or too narrow, but the impact is going to be very political. And I don't know if it changes things too much, except to say that you're probably not going to see some districts get protected the way that they have been. And certainly partisanship is now like just a kind of unfettered, uncaged animal where they can draw lines in whatever way that they want that are effectively partisan in orientation. So that's going to change the dynamics. And how this ends up playing out, we don't know. I think in the near term, term, like we've been saying, Democrats are likely to do better in the midterm, but long term, Republicans are going to net seats, I think, in a normal course of action because of the way that the lines are drawn. That is going to be a kind of structural advantage for them.
But then those lines are going to be redrawn by Democrats.
It's possible, yeah.
Right?
Although some of these states are very Republican, so I don't think you'll see a lot of changes. But then the Democratic states will do the opposite, right?
Exactly.
So I think that's what you're saying,
Right.
where you're going to see the kind of tit for tat strategy, which just never seems
race
to end.
to the bottom.
Yeah, and some states are pushing back, like South Carolina is sort of making some overtures that they're not going to go in that direction. We saw Indiana do the same.
Right.
Some members paid the price for that. So we're definitely going to see, I think, outcomes here that are going to be a little bit wonky and very political in the meantime. But to me, the Democrats may have lost the redistricting fight, but they've gained an issue for the midterm, and that is that they needed desperately to have urban voters and black voters and younger voters be really engaged in this process. I think this decision and the kind of redistricting wars around it will make that happen. Speaking of elections, let's switch to Texas. None other than former President Barack Obama was here in Austin, Texas, weighing in on the U.S. Senate race, but also, of course, weighing in on the fight between which city has the best tacos. Is he tacitly saying that Austin has the best tacos because they went there, not San Antonio, where James Tallarico is from?
I'm not going to get into that fight.
That's way too partisan for us.
Yes, and I know where the best tacos are.
Okay. Well, are you going to reveal?
I'm not going to reveal it.
Let's say if we cut the mics, you're going to give just us in the room,
maybe
our awesome crew,
maybe
the inside of okay.
I will bring some.
Okay, good. Well, that's a good start.
And those are my tacos.
I'll take that as a start. But Barack Obama was here for the tacos, but also here for stumping for James Tallarico, and Jeannie Hinojosa is running for governor.
Right.
What do you make of the politics of this?
I mean, he's, I guess, stepping up the game. Barack Obama as president was had very high approval ratings. I think that he connects with people in such a way that other previous presidents are not able to do so. He's very energetic, and I think that this can, I guess, excite a little bit more the Democratic base that needs to be very excited if they want to beat the Republican candidate.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like we've talked about, the Democrats have been sluggish in terms of turnout in 2024. If those numbers continue, then they will not be competitive. There are certainly signs that's turning around. Like we talked about, the primary definitely had some signals that was the case, but they cannot take this for granted. So I think calling in the big guns here is probably pretty smart. This is like, World War II era heavy tank.
Oh, yeah,
Barack
absolutely.
Obama is among the most popular members in the Democratic Party. That is frankly not that popular overall. None of the parties are. But this is definitely a good kind of indication that this is a national race. And the kind of surprise showing here is really interesting. Like the Tallarico campaign emails us like 3 times a day what they're doing and how they're doing it. This one came almost like as a just surprise, like they're, kind of inviting the former president. And the kind of effort, I think, is really useful for Democrats because, like we said, they have to be able to, kind of spur the Democrats generally into power. It also, I think, gives Tallarico a better handle on the Democratic electorate that has been reluctant to embrace him fully. The battle between he and Jasmine Crockett ended badly. There's a lot of rift there. And obviously having somebody as popular and as impactful as Barack Obama come is a way to kind of unify the party back together in a moment where he desperately needs it. But I want to talk about the negatives to this because, like, for every yin, there's a yang, right?
Yes.
Like, Democrats obviously love Barack Obama, but guess what? It turns out that, like, the Republicans hate him. So what do you make of the impact of this on the kind of counter side?
Well, I mean, if we were in an election where we would not have a runoff between the Republican candidates, I think that this would benefit the Republican candidate, right? Right now, it's an issue that, yes, of course, everybody hates on the Republican side Barack Obama. Fine, but that doesn't get you to be the winner of the runoff election.
It doesn't make you love the person you're voting for.
So the issue is that this unifies Republicans. But the question is, there's no difference between those that support Senator Cornyn or A.J. Paxton or whatever it is, because it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. So right now, I think that for this particular issue, is irrelevant. Is something that they cannot engage fully with it because everybody is going to agree whether you're supporting one or the other.
I think that this has a kind of potential down ballot to link the Democrats to a more kind of liberal approach. Obama's not the most liberal member of the party, but Bernie Sanders is. And so John Cornyn said that, like, you've got Obama coming to campaign for Tellerico. Bernie Sanders is going to be the keynote for the Democratic convention in a couple of weeks. Then you've got, I think, a kind of swirl where Republicans are saying, look at what your opposition is. This is the Democrats presenting their kind of national leaders that are very liberal, much more liberal than, you know, Texas in general. That's a line that they've been kind of playing and has been pretty successful. John Cornyn especially has played that to his success in his last couple Senate races. It's also, I think, a potential to be able to just polarize the race, right? And so for Tellerico, his kind of theory of the case is that you need Democrats to turn out in big numbers, but you also need people who are kind of independents, leaners, people who are reluctant Republicans, people who maybe don't care about politics that much to all come out to vote. If you partisanize this race, I'm coining that phrase, trademark me today, like that means that you're going to have a real problem of like kind of tempering down expectations about partisanship, right? Because Tellerico wants to present himself as a kind of moderate to kind of I'm with you kind of Democrat, right? Not like a full-throated, just straight-up partisan. And I think this minimizes that message a little.
Well, I mean, yes, I see your argument about what partisanization.
Partisanization. Trademark.
Like it, love it. But I think that the issue here is that when you see Tellerico's message, right, is very down to earth in the sense of affordability, in the sense of, you know, the 1%ers taking away, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that gives him the opportunity to go after these other voters because, yes, the race is going to be, and it is already very polarized, right? But these particular issues are issues that are just going to resonate immediately with more independent or Republicans are not happy or whatnot.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I mean, Obama's the more popular of the recent past presidents. And so I think that can be a successful enterprise. And again, this is about the Democrats more than anything else. And so we're overreading this for, you know, because that's what we do.
Yes.
We're analysts and, you know, political scientists. But I do think that there are some, you know, real positives here, especially because Tellerico needs to raise serious money. This is an indication that he's being embraced by the Democratic Party. But let me ask you this question. There's been some chatter lately, for those of us who are very online, about Tellerico running for vice president. That is to say that he's actually being asked questions from the media like, will, if you're elected, you serve for your full 6-year term in the Senate? This seems to be like way, way, way early jumping that gun. The same thing happened to Beto O'Rourke, right? Like his meteoric rise looked like it was going to never end, but then all of a sudden crashing down it did. So how do you what do you think of this sort of process where, like, you know, we're just sort of creating these heroes, or Democrats are creating these heroes, and then like all of a sudden, you know, they don't win in Texas because like they don't pitch it right.
Well, they have to tame down those expectations because they're completely 1,000% naive.
By bringing the former president in.
Well, I mean,
to me, it's like that's like, so as a negative side of things, it's like, okay, here's the kind of president, and like here's James Tellerico, who's talked about as like vice president in quotes. Doesn't help that case, right? To say like we're overhyping these expectations.
Oh yeah, no, it doesn't help.
People don't think that way.
No,
yeah, I mean maybe that's true.
Yeah, it doesn't help
because we're looking at these memes where it's like, you know, Barack Obama, you know, kind of ahead, and you've got James Tellerico right next to him, so people are memeing this, saying like all these kinds of things. So it's like it's a very niche kind of thing that most people don't care about. But you know, these are kind of the political trends that we're watching and that we deliver to you here on Party Politics.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the Republican side. John Cornyn banking a huge amount of money between the last kind of filing period, April and May 6th. He's brought in about $4.5 million. He's got $8 million on hand ahead of the primary. That's a lot of money. Paxton's not raising that much money. What's going on?
I mean, Cornyn has been one of the greatest fundraisers in the history of the Senate.
Very true.
So he's just doing what he knows to do. So, I mean...
And get ready for ads.
Oh,
right? Like it's going to be an onslaught.
It's going to be a huge battle. And I think that Well, first of all, we're very close to find out who's going to be the victor in this race.
Wow. Yeah. Early voting starts, next week, 2 weeks from now? So
Yep.
It's really close.
It's going to be very interesting.
And
to
we're
see.
also seeing Ken Paxton pursuing a strategy I think that's pretty smart. You don't have to raise a lot of money if you can play to your base. And he, for instance, as we talked about before, is using his office to sue people and essentially put these issues into the field. One thing he's doing this week is opening investigations into various school districts over the Ten Commandments law, which requires these districts to prominently display the Ten Commandments. He's also suing Netflix, which people have no doubt heard of. People like to Netflix and chill, but what we have is the Attorney General saying that when you watch Netflix, Netflix watches you. They're harvesting our information, and he says that's illegal. The legal side of things, I don't know how it's going to play out, but it definitely is something that gives him the opportunity to make headlines, to make it look like he's working for us on issues that we understand and care about. So in a way, it's pretty smart for him. But he doesn't have to raise that much money to pursue this kind of strategy.
No, of course not. But once again, the issue here is that also the Republican Party, within the Republican Party is polarized one way or the other. Yeah. So if you're catering to your base already knows what they want, and your base is going to support, right? What you need to do is to make sure that they're going to be turning out in greater numbers than your opponents, in this case, Senator Cornyn. Yeah. But the issue here is then how is that going to play out in the general election for whoever wins this runoff election? Yeah. So
you're tied to these issues,
exactly,
kind of forever.
Exactly. So it's a smart strategy, but I think that in the short term, we'll have a more impactful outcome than when we're looking at medium and long term, especially looking at the general election.
Yeah. Last issue is that the border wall in Big Bend seems like it's not going to happen. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection Commissioner has said essentially it's canceled. Bipartisan pushback from Texas. What do you make of the outcome here?
Well, thank God. It's obviously state park, beautiful. Yeah. It has a lot of wildlife that goes from Mexico to Texas and the other way around. A lot of migration. A lot of species go one way or the other. Yeah. So I think it's important to have that, as it is.
And there's not a mutual kind of dissatisfaction with this. You can have conservation and border security. They have technology they can use to employ this. And I think that's the kind of win-win here. If this is going to be a policy the government's going to push, they need to do what they can to protect things. And so it seems like that's a compromise. So I guess that's a win, right?
On that compromise, on that win, that's it for this week. I'm Jeronimo Cortina.
And I'm Brandon Rottinghaus. The conversation keeps up next week.